Now 250,000. Now, but to get 275. High, but to get 275. 3. Now 300,000. Now 3 1/4. 325. High, but to get 3 1/4. But to get 325. Now half. Now, but to get 300.
And hello and good morning from Dallas, Texas, the center of the universe. This is November the 11th, Veterans Day, 2019, and you're joining the Mike McGavel Jones Show here in Lincoln Center, and we want to welcome you. We're doing a live version at 11 o'clock. We don't normally do that, but we're doing one today. And so some of you saw our show on Friday, which was kind of a last-second show we put on with our veterans, and that was for the Veterans Extreme Adventures group, and we had that fundraiser yesterday over in Fort Worth and had about 200 people, and we just raised money and doubled their money from last year and had a great afternoon, a great evening, and so we appreciate the good folks with that group for having us come over and inviting us to be a part of it, because we always like helping our veterans, and today being Veterans Day, it's a very important day for anyone who's ever worn the uniform. And if you have someone in your family that's worn the uniform, or if you worn the uniform, we salute them from coast to coast and around the world. And we have people fighting for us right now that are giving up their lives to make sure our country is sustained in the way that we want it to be, free, and for us to be able to move around and have a wonderful life. And that's what America's all about. Speaking of America and a wonderful life, our guest today is Dean H. Rosencrans. You didn't even know I knew the H, did you?
Yeah, but you don't know what it stands for.
Well, Harvey?
Yes. Wow, you are good.
So my friend Dean, we've been trying to get it together for some time now. He is the Texas Market President for Associated Bank and Commercial and Corporate Group, Associated Bank, and we're going to talk about the bank. We're going to talk about the network that you guys have, the history of the bank. It's got a great history. It goes back a long ways. People don't realize it. And then you also are the founder of the Dallas Bankers Club.
Right.
And that's what I want to talk about too. Cool. And then you also do a show called the Dallas Bankers Club Show in studios that look a lot like this one.
Yes, right here.
By the same people.
Yes. Just not this studio. I like this one.
Yeah, this is kind of my home away from home.
Yeah.
And I was just reminded a minute ago that this is like, we've done like 59 shows.
You've done 59 shows?
That's what he said.
Wow.
I know, I can't believe it. So
do you do a show every day?
It seems like it, doesn't
wow.
it? Yeah. Yeah, no, we try to do at least one a week if we can. And once we started, we enjoy it. And we like to have our friends on. And it's really interesting the way we met, because, of course, people know that you and I both, your friends and my friends, know we like good food.
Yes, unfortunately.
And we like good food and libation. And so I was at Albernays, and no offense, and this was the north location off of Spring Valley. And so we were at, I was at Albernays and having an afternoon glass of wine on my way to the hacienda.
By yourself?
Yeah, I was by myself. And I looked across, and there's Jeff Crilly, the king of Real Communications News and Real PR, who these studios are so named for. And you were sitting there with your
my
boss.
manager, Tom Schlehuber.
Yeah,
right.
Out of Indiana.
Right.
And so Tom and Jeff and you.
Who else was there?
I don't recall. You were it. That was it. You were just
it
was the three amigos over there.
Okay.
And then we ended up talking, and then it turned into like a talk fest.
Well, I mean, it was, one of those moments that I'll never forget, because now you're in my life.
Well, that's what I started to say. We became fast friends.
Yeah.
And so then you invited me to the Dallas Bankers Club.
Right.
And then we'll talk about that and how that all comes. But first, what I want to do is thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Because today is a bank holiday.
It is, and I'm glad that you had me on my day off. I appreciate that.
Well,
and a non-veteran. And unfortunately, I'm not, but I do want to say how appreciative I am of the veterans, and happy Veterans Day.
Yep.
I see your lapel pin, and
Yep.
in honor, I also have my lapel
I get
pin.
asked a lot if I served, and I'd love to be able to tell people that I did, but I didn't.
Yeah.
But you know what? I got the flags as fast as I could, and
Sure.
you can call me Yankee Doodle Dandy if you want to, but I wear the pin every day.
Yeah.
I mean
I
every
try
day.
to.
And
I try to.
even when I'm not wearing a sport coat or a
Sure.
suit, you know.
Yeah. No, not too many people have. I mean, we all have probably grandparents or whatnot that have served, and my
Sure.
grandfather served. He was in Okinawa in WW2, and he passed when he was 95.
Wow.
But when he did pass, he passed with a collection of guns.
Wow.
And he had a Luger, and it's a fascinating sidearm.
Yep.
My brother ended up with that, but just kind of that brings it home when you can actually
See a piece of history.
See a piece of history like that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, and in our position in life, we've been blessed to have great careers, things we like to do, something that we're qualified to do, and to be able to do that in a country this particular country,
Right.
which I believe is the greatest country in the world. We're blessed.
Yep.
We're just absolute blessed.
Yep.
And so thank God we're here.
Thank God. I mean, I was just one. My mom was from Nicaragua, Managua, Nicaragua.
Yeah, I heard.
And she was a transfer student in college, and met my dad up in Montana. And I mean, I could be down there,
Well, that wouldn't be as good.
No. No.
I don't know. There's probably some
There's
place
pockets,
down-
yeah.
there is. A little unstable,
Yes.
but a nice place. So let's talk about the young dean,
Sure.
because I find it fascinating to learn where people came from, what made them what they are, and what got them to this place in time. I do know that you're married. You've been married
Yep.
for over 27 years.
27 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've
Doesn't
got
feel like it.
no. That's
No.
good.
No.
That's good.
Just seems like yesterday.
Well, that's great. And you have two adopted
Seems
dogs.
how we're going live. I had to say that.
Well, I was getting ready to say, I could say a lot of stuff, and you know me. If we were just sitting here, and
Right.
I'd say pretty much anything. You've got two adopted daughters
Yes.
from China.
Yeah. Emma and Abby.
And how old
Drives
are
them
they?
crazy when I use their Chinese name, though.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yuji is Emma Yuji and Abby Ting Ying. But
That's cute.
yeah.
How old are they?
So Emma is going on 20. She's
Wow.
she's 19 now, but she's a sophomore down at Texas A&M. And Abby's a senior out at Flower Mound High School. And we're looking at schools right now.
Oh, lucky you.
Oh my gosh!
Yes.
You
It
know.
just gets cheaper all the time.
I'll tell you what.
That is your Lamborghini.
Yeah. We've been saving forever though, and I'm just one of those. And I'm a banker too, but there's just no way to save enough.
You're never that prepared.
Never that prepared.
No.
And now the times are here, and
It's staring at you.
yeah, and we want to leave that legacy where they don't have any debt or anything like
Sure.
that. But I'm going to be the legacy is me going to be in debt.
You'll be on the corner holding a sign up. Please.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
Struggling
Well,
banker.
right before I came here, this is how I dressed for that.
Struggling banker. Please. Donations.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your childhood. So
Sure.
your mom's from Nicaragua.
Right.
And your dad, I guess, from Montana?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Both gone now, but yeah. So born and raised in Butte, Montana.
Yep.
That's with an E, not you got to keep the E on the end of that.
I understand. Or it would be a...
That would be a yes.
Yes.
Get it all the time.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure. So what was it like growing up there?
Well, Butte is it's a mining town, and it's a mile high on the Continental Divide.
Are you telling me it's not very pretty?
I look at it now and it's beautiful.
Yeah. The range.
Yeah, I mean, but when you're there and you're knee deep in snow and 60 below weather, and you're faced with, as you get older, what am I going to do with my life? What am I going to grow up to be? And back then, the pathways were either, if you could get on at the water district, oh man, that's the best job.
That's golden.
That's golden.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or if you can get on the power company or something like that. In the mine, looking back on it, that was, it's 100+ year old, older than that actually. And it was a melting pot of people in its heyday. Butte used to have over 150,000 people in it.
Wow.
Now it has like 18,000 people. And it was a big city, and there was a lot of millionaires in this town. Marcus Daly and Augusta Hines, the Copper Kings, and I can only imagine what it was back then.
Sure.
But
they were like the railroad barons.
Yeah. Pretty much. It was arguably that between the two of them, or even one of them, were wealthier than J.P. Morgan.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Oh, yeah.
Did you know he was a pretty big banker?
Yeah, that's right. And he would come to Butte
Yeah.
and party.
I'm sure.
Yeah. So, and then there was another one that would come to Butte, the Hearst family, right?
From California.
Yeah.
William Randolph.
Yeah. So, William Randolph was a kid.
Oh, wow.
So his parents
were partying out.
Yes. So anyway,
Can you imagine that conversation? You're sitting outside of San Francisco or wherever they were at the time, and they go, hey, "Let's go party in Butte with an E."
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
I don't even know how they would have gotten there. But anyway,
Train.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the possibilities of a future in Butte just were limited.
Yep.
Go to work in the mine or go do something like that for $8 an hour.
I know you have a brother. Do you have
Yeah.
other siblings?
No, just a brother.
Just a brother.
Just a brother.
Yeah, just a brother.
Still up there, actually.
Yeah, from the same mother.
Brother from the same mother.
Yeah.
Yep.
And he's still there?
Yeah. He's my older brother.
What does he do? He's with the water district.
He's a colorful character. So what he's doing now, I don't know, to be honest with you.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that's a whole nother show. We may have to get that doctor that does the psychotherapy here. We may have to get that one in.
Well, we can make that happen.
Yeah.
You know that.
So I know. Well, she happens to be right here. So I decided pretty early on
To escape?
To escape. So my mom passed when I was 16. Yeah, of a stroke. And my brother and I were really the only family that we had. My father was in the town, but they were divorced years and years beforehand, so wasn't really in the picture. So my 18-year-old brother became my guardian. And so that was, you can imagine what that was all about.
Hence, we're not close today.
Yes, yeah. So when I turned 18, I decided, I need to get out of his house. We both shared the house. I said, I've got to go, and tried the college thing in town. There's a school there called Montana Tech, Institute of Mineral Science and Technology.
Heard of that?
Yeah, it's a very renowned engineering school. And decided, I'll be a mining engineer or do something like that. Well, you can imagine I wasn't really a great student.
You didn't even like your hometown.
That's right. I mean, so going to that school was kind of like going back to high school because all the kids were there.
Yep.
And
that's why a lot of people don't like to go to their community college.
Yeah.
Because it's all the same people.
It's all the same people.
Yeah.
And I wasn't necessarily the greatest high school student. I was named the Twerp King, if that tells you anything.
Sweet.
So, yeah, I mean, the Twerp King, are you kidding me? I've arrived.
Some things just never change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I still live in that shadow.
Nice.
I tell people I'm the Twerp King a lot. So
that's an interesting term.
I have no idea what it means. I think it meant the class clown.
Here interestingly enough, here in Dallas, Fort Worth, we used to have a TV show early in the mornings. I think it came on like at 6 or 7. You watched it every morning. And the guy on there, his name was Icky Twerp. I'm not kidding.
Wow.
Icky
Well,
twerp. And he looked icky, and he was a twerp. So anybody that's over the age of, say, 55 to 60,
Yeah.
they know
They know
exactly
Iggy.
who I'm talking about.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm almost there.
Yeah.
So,
You're coming along.
Coming
You're doing
along.
fine. You're
Yeah.
you're a pretty good networker from what I can tell.
yeah.
So you go off to Washington State.
University of Washington. So I decided I needed to get out of Montana
Yep.
in general. Moved over to Seattle. And, you know, for a Montana kid, that's a big deal to kind of break chain and move to the big city. And in Montana, there's only a few big cities around that area: Denver, Salt Lake, Seattle, maybe Minneapolis.
Very limited.
Very limited.
Yep. All places I go on a regular basis.
You're right.
Yep.
Yeah, well, you were just up in Seattle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, so it's interesting how the mind works. So as a child, I went to the University of Washington Medical Center to have my elbow surgery. And
Too much tennis.
no, my brother pushed me off the roof of our house. Whole nother story.
Hence again, another anecdote why we don't talk to my
That's right.
brother.
Well, it's a funny thing. I mean,
Oh, that's
remember
hilarious.
the lawn darts?
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
literally, they
I-
could kill you.
Yeah, yeah. They had to quit selling them, I think,
Right.
because they were killing
So
people.
we were out playing lawn darts, and I kept throwing them onto the roof of the house, and my big brother would have to go get them, and he just decided that he was done with
He was
that.
going to kill you.
Yeah, so I get up there, and he jumps off the roof because it was only like
Yeah.
8 feet or whatever, and
Yeah.
he's athletic, and he jumps off, and I get up there, and I freeze. I got scared. I was just a little kid.
You were twerp.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
And started crying and everything. Well, he got up there and he goes, "Okay, I'll jump with you."
He's like a ranger going to show you how to
it's like,
parachute.
okay. So instead, it's kind of one of those things. 1, 2, 3. He pushes me off the roof.
Nice, nice.
And I land, and instead of landing and falling forward, I land and fall backwards and hit my elbow on the concrete. So anyway, I go to Seattle with my mom, and I had these memories of ice cream and just a kind of a good time. We went to the zoo there. And so that kept with me all the way through when I was older. And I go, I want to go to Seattle. I have these memories.
That's where all the ice cream
That's
is.
where the ice cream is.
And the zoo.
Yeah.
I can stay there.
That's right. And so anyway, I made the move out there, and within 24 hours, I had an apartment and a job.
Nice.
Yeah. I mean, it's one thing about growing up in Montana is you're self-sufficient.
Yep.
And
You
you
gotta
learn
move
to
quick.
do a lot of things. And I'm very handy, and worked in construction, and my best friend had a ranch. So we pretty much could do anything.
Yep.
And fear was not an issue.
Yep.
And so, the city was kind of daunting, but at the same time, it was like pretty exhilarating for
Oh.
a young kid. So I got my apartment, got my construction job, and just started working and to build up enough nest egg to go back to school. Met the wife, and she said, "Listen, without a degree, we're not going anywhere." And it's like, okay. So she kind of pushed me into finishing up at
You've
the
been
university.
pushed a lot.
I've been pushed a lot. So I was on the 10-year program.
Yep.
And, I probably, when I finally graduated, I know for a fact I probably set a record for the number of credits that I had.
Credits and years.
Yes. I had way over 250 credits when it only required like 130 to graduate.
Sure. Well, you were a professional student.
That's right. That's right.
And worker.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, she and I met and finished up the UW, and then everything started.
So
from
how
there.
did you decide to get into finance?
I didn't necessarily get into
What
this
was your
business.
major? What was your major?
Business.
Yeah.
Yeah, but not finance.
But not
marketing.
finance. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's just it just happened, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Out of college, I got. I've always kind of wanted to own something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it was, but there was a recruiting fair or something like that on campus, and a farmer's agency or a farmer's district manager talked fancy to me. I mean, you talk fancy to me, man, and I'm following you.
I see.
home. Yeah.
I see how that goes. Yeah. That's how I got you here.
That's right. That's right. And so
And when we say farmers, are we talking about insurance?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it was an interesting program, all commission based, 100% commission.
Yeah.
And
you kill it, you eat it.
That's right. That's right. And so luckily, Angela, my wife, had a very good job, corporate job in Seattle. And so she could support me through some of these crazy times.
Leaner times.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I did the farmer's thing, wasn't quite what I wanted.
Yep.
And moved over from insurance to CNA, and was a market manager for CNA Insurance. And a friend of mine from my farmer's days started work at GE Capital. And
Now you're talking my language.
yeah, he called me and said, "Hey, listen, we've talked about getting out of insurance and getting in, and I'm out of farmers now, and I'm over at GE, and we're hiring. What do you think?" And it's like, yeah, this may be my opportunity. So they talked fancy to me.
And you followed.
I followed.
Yes.
But it was a good time because back then GE was
Rockin'.
GE. It was Jack Welch.
Yep.
Had a company car. I was young.
No,
I
you
mean,
hit- you
I
hit-
could
no,
pick up.
for a kid from where you were from. You hit the holy grail.
Oh yeah, I mean, it was a resume builder. I didn't necessarily know it, but I did after.
Yeah.
And Jack Welch was amazing. The company was amazing. You know, I could call you as an example and say, "Hey, Mr. Business Owner, I'm with GE Capital, and I finance yellow iron."
I would listen to you.
Goes, "Come on in,"
Yeah.
right?
Sure.
And so anyway,
And what year was this? When did you join GE?
1998 sometime.
See, just a few years before that, probably in 95, 96, is when I started working with GE Capital.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Did you know that?
No, I don't think I knew that.
Yeah. Yeah.
On the what side of the business?
Well, you got to remember, I'm in the auction business.
Okay.
And so, you know, there'd be a lease
Yeah.
on an entire plant of machinery, and then we would go in and appraise it. I have a friend that's one of the best machinery appraisers in the world, and he did a lot of GE Capital stuff and Textron Finance, which I worked with Textron Finance. So from the 90s into the 2000s, I was liquidating plants and machinery. And
Right.
It was a lot of it was leased, some of it was owned, you know, or they would take it, you know.
Yeah, it was a great company.
Yeah. But they were pretty badass.
Yeah. Well, you know, what ended up kind of being the reason for leaving GE was kind of interesting from the standpoint of I was so single focused product on, you know, from the standpoint of just finance.
Yep.
I didn't have anything else to offer. My cross sell was, well, who handles your lighting? Or do you have any silicon needs?
Do you need to buy a turbine?
That's right.
We've got a deal on
You know,
turbines.
I was
Over at Love Field, we got a building full
They
of
put me
turbines.
on a board for up in Seattle to be the cross sell guy, right? To kind of manage it. It's like we have nothing in common.
Yeah.
Outside of me financing some of these large construction companies.
It's a square hole. You're a round peg.
That's right. There's nothing here that I can sell. They don't need X-ray machines or anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but I was still losing deals to banks. Not because of my financing, but because of this thing called treasury management, cash management, and relationship management. I mean, I heard this all the time from owners about, oh, well, you know, I'm going to go with U.S. Bank or Wells Fargo because they have the relationship pricing and the treasury. And I'm going, what is treasury? What is cash management?
So you had to get smart again.
I had to reinvent myself again.
Yep.
So I ended up at U.S. Bank, and they called me. I really don't know how they got my number or how they knew me, but they called me, talked fancy to me, and I ended up going to U.S. Bank in their corporate group as a business development officer in Seattle.
In Seattle.
Yeah. And, you know, I didn't know banking, but they didn't necessarily want somebody that knew banking.
It's exactly what they didn't need. They
That's right.
didn't want that. They wanted you to be able to do what they did.
That's right. They want me to go talk to business owners and get them into the bank, right?
Yep.
So that was I knew the finance side, but I didn't know the banking side or the treasury side, so they trained me up on that. Then U.S. Bank was purchased by First Star out of Minneapolis, and the culture kind of changed. Went more retail versus commercial, and I thought it was time for a move, and Wells Fargo had called. And interesting, back then, Wells didn't have a market share in Seattle or Washington. It was very, very small.
Yep. Which is interesting because they're a West Coast company.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. They were, I mean, Wells Fargo was really nothing before Norwest bought them.
Yeah.
And then people said, well, who's Norwest? And it's like, well, Norwest is the one. That's the power behind Wells Fargo back then.
Yep.
And then the first interstate and all these other things happened. And
it's really interesting when you go back and look. When I got in business in the late 70s, early 80s, and I moved to Dallas originally, I think in 83, 84, right here on this street out here.
Right.
When it was a street and not a freeway.
Uh-huh.
You know, I think
The toll road was a street?
Oh yeah.
Oh, really?
I used to walk across it. Yeah. There's kind of a line that I use about that when I tell somebody if you know where Lowry's is located.
Yeah.
Well, that at that time it was called the Rusty Pelican. And anybody within the sound of my voice that is of a certain age knows that was the Rusty Pelican. And there's another. I just ate at one in what is it? Outside of Los Angeles. So there's more than one. But this was one of the early ones, and it was a great place to go. And you know, North Dallas was a very different place at that time. It was smaller, but it was happening. It was the happening place, and because all those buildings that you see now were just being built.
Really?
And all those condos and apartments going up the Parkway.
Right.
It was all young people, and I mean, you know.
So was the Galleria here?
The Galleria was about all there was.
Okay.
Yeah, and some friends of ours. I'll do a quick shout out to Bart Davenport, and he's out in Rockwall. But his grandfather owned the dirt where the Galleria was built.
Okay.
And so his grandfather was a veterinarian, and at the corner of Inwood and Spring Valley. And they still have their family jewelry operation there, and his brother Nathan. And the reason I know them is because Bart and Nathan came to auction school when they were teenagers.
Right.
Well, they're not teenagers anymore. They're in their 40s, I guess. But they became good friends. But we actually took our dog to their grandfather's vet clinic, which is what their jewelry store now is.
Yeah.
So anyway, but it's funny because the building was very nondescript. It was just a small building. But what was interesting is that Grandpa was a smart man, and he got into the oil thing and had interest in wells all over in Decatur and Jacksboro and everywhere. Yeah. Hence, he owned the property where the Galleria is located. And that's why their family has a lifetime membership at the University Club upstairs. And,
I've never been there.
Yeah. Well, they don't let people like you in.
Really? Yeah, I can imagine. I've been to a lot of clubs that they would stop me at the door.
But anyway, it was a fun time. I just thought I'd throw that story at you, so you can realize how different things are. Because the tollway literally ended right here at this building. It ended here, and it was all street.
Sure.
And the street only went up to like Beltline.
Yeah.
So it's been quite a change. And back to the point of the whole thing, First Interstate was a big deal.
Yeah.
Allied Bank was a big deal.
Yeah.
And I did business with all of them.
Sure.
As they were exiting.
Yeah.
Or being bought.
Yeah. Well, Allied is now Bank of America. Is that right?
That sounds familiar. Yeah.
Well, you know, there was not that much activity from the bank acquisition side in Seattle, or I should say at that time. You know, you didn't see a lot of this activity. I mean, some bigger acquisitions, yes, but you really didn't see what I see down here now from an acquisition perspective.
Oh, this is the acquisition capital of the world.
Yeah. So Wells treated me really well. Angela and I, we adopted the girls. She's from Durant, Oklahoma.
Really?
Yeah, born and raised. And so we looked at where we really wanted to raise the girls.
Durant.
Yeah.
That's funny.
I love Durant.
Yeah.
It's a nice little town.
Yeah.
you know.
I've been there. I've done
and it's
business
growing
there.
like crazy.
I've sold some businesses
Yeah,
there. Well,
yeah.
it helps when you have a casino down the road.
Oh gosh, yeah.
There's a lot of money injected into that area.
Yeah. And there's like some big companies moving in there. A lot of, you know, Commercial Metals, I think, is in there now.
It's more
and
affordable.
Dollar.
It's more affordable to move to southern Oklahoma than North Texas.
Yeah. So, you know, we looked at, you know, how we're going to raise the girls, and we decided as a family to try to get closer to hers versus, you know, staying in Seattle or whatnot.
Yep.
And so Wells had a perfect position for me. They relocated me down here in 2004 and got back into the insurance side again because they had bought a very large insurance group, called it Cordia, and I became a district manager for the central part of the U.S. on the cross-sell side. So anyway, got down here, and it was the best move I ever made.
Sure.
I mean, from a business perspective, there is no comparison.
No better place.
No better place. And so ended up getting out of the insurance side onto the international banking side with Wells Fargo. We were a joint venture with HSBC, and all I did was international trading companies, letters of credit, and XM, the whole 9 yards.
Yep.
And then the huge nuclear event happened, in my mind anyway, where Wells and Wachovia got together, and Wells changed to a certain degree.
Well, they always say nothing's going to change. I always love that term in every company.
Right.
Whether it was the merger of the Dallas Morning News and the Times Herald, nothing's going to change.
Yeah.
Not
you
exactly.
know, I don't work there, so and I'm not an executive per se, so I'm not going to say the executive taglines that everything's going to be great and, you know, it's a merger of equals or whatever. Mm-hmm. When you're on the line and you're in the middle of it, you don't care about that, right?
Right.
It changes. And Wells went from, you know, 150,000 employees in 23 states west of the Mississippi to now over 300,000. And it was a totally different culture.
Yep.
Right? Mm-hmm. And had to live through kind of how they're going to match up the two banks. And there was all this re-interviewing where, you know, if you were in Texas at that time, there was a Wachovia across the street from the Wells Fargo.
Oh, I remember.
Right? Yep. So there's a lot of overlap there. Yep. And so you had to re-interview for your position. So you have to be equitable, right? You've got two bankers. You got to re-interview for the same position. And so, you know, it was at that time I decided to get out of that situation. And it was hard because I was there for 11 years, and I drank the Kool-Aid for the bank. And to a degree, I still find Wells Fargo, you know, it's a great bank and great people. I have a lot of good friends there, but it was just a tough time to make that
like
move.
Any company, all companies, there's always going to be a bump in the road,
right?
Because something's going to happen,
right?
And of course, they had theirs, a few years ago,
a few of them,
yeah.
Well,
because of social media, that's the problem you had today, because you know.
They didn't really have it to the extent back then.
No, 30 years ago, 25, 30 years ago, something could happen and it might make the news.
Right.
Might.
Right.
And it might not make the news. And if it does make the Wall Street Journal,
right,
or Investors Business Daily,
right,
the average American or whoever wouldn't know about it.
Well, if you think about it, this was only 2008.
Yeah, I know.
So there wasn't a Twitter.
Perfect timing for a recession.
Right. Yeah. There wasn't a Twitter. There wasn't really a Facebook to what it is today, and we were watching the just kind of all the collapse of the economy every day on CNN.
Yep.
That was our access, right?
Yep.
And we really didn't know what was going on other than just kind of because we didn't have the iPhone wasn't out yet.
The funny thing now is you can set all those indicators in your phone, so when a word comes out,
right, Right.
It's going to pop up on your phone. The
I have
story's
it
going to
set
pop
for
up.
my name, but I've never got it.
No.
I've never got anything yet.
I recommend that you put in twerp. It'll pop up all the time.
That's right.
That's funny.
So
I'm an equal opportunity abuser.
Yes.
You know.
No, I bring it on.
And people need to understand this is exactly how we are when we're together.
That's right. So I got out of there, went over to BBVA for a little while, and they had talked fancy to me as well, and did that for about 3 years in their corporate group, and then went over to Capital One. Enjoyed my time there. Got laid off. It's one of those things. When you talk about layoff, obviously there's that negative connotation. Oh well, bankers don't get laid off. What did he do wrong? And it's like, you don't have to do anything wrong. Right?
Yep.
One day I show up.
You're a number.
That's right. I show up and get called into my manager's office, and just so happens that it's not just him. There's somebody on the phone. Ooh, a mysterious lady from HR.
Yeah.
Who, when your manager doesn't look you in the eye,
and the transition lady's on the phone.
Exactly right.
Yep.
And it's like, so I kind of checked out of that conversation. I was like, wow, that was a gut shot. But it's one of those things that I look back on now, and I'm so thankful that it happened.
Yep.
At the time, it was terrible.
Shell shocked.
Yes. Couldn't talk. I mean, I walked out of that office, walked next to my colleague at Capital One, and I could barely say I just got laid off. I was so upset.
Yep.
And I just left. And I got home an hour later from when I left the house, and Angela's like, why are you home?
This is not a good sign.
And it's like, so anyway, after reading the documentation as to what the package was and everything, it was okay. I think this will be okay.
Yep.
We'll be okay. But I had to still go through those, the whole rant or scale of emotions.
Upset.
Yes.
Mad.
Depressed.
Depressed.
Yep.
All of it.
Yep. Postal was in there somewhere.
You get it all.
Yeah.
You get it all.
And so I finished every home project that I could, took about 6 months off.
Yep.
There is a time for bankers, as you know. Usually bankers there's a bonus time, which comes in February, March time frame. And usually that's after those bonuses are paid when bankers start to look for other opportunities. So here I am in October of the prior year, and there's really nobody interested in hiring bankers. I mean, they're either fully employed or just trying to put their budgets together for the next year. So timing was off. So, and I recognized that, and I, had talked to a lot of banks, thinking that, the size of bank, I wanted to go smaller. I wanted to get out of this corporate environment and didn't want to be necessarily the number anymore. Well, what I come to find out in community banking is that's why they call them community banks. They don't necessarily do corporate lending.
Yeah.
So they're kind of cut off at a certain size. Yeah. When you have had...
There's a cap.
Yeah. Usually based on, how much capital they have, there's a percentage number there. And so the smaller the bank, the smaller the lending limit.
Yep.
Right?
Of course.
Well, so I started to recognize that I'm going to be fairly frustrated in this scenario if I go to a community bank and my lending limit is $2.5 or $5 million.
Yep.
When I've been doing $150, $200 million deals before.
Yep.
And so, that was kind of a wake-up call, and I didn't know necessarily if I could change enough to go that far down in my thinking from the standpoint of lending.
Yep.
My Rolodex really wasn't covering those.
You're at a different level. Totally different level.
And there are various levels. Not to say that's a bad thing.
Yep.
You can be successful at any level, almost equally, and sometimes more on the smaller end.
Yep.
But
that wasn't your expertise.
No. And it wasn't my train of thought either. So, Anyway, a couple months later, a friend of mine reached out, who's with Associated Bank, and said, "Hey, we're moving down into the Texas market." He runs commercial real estate, and he didn't know anything about what I do. Usually when you're specialists, you focus on what you do, and you don't necessarily know what the other guys do. And so he knows commercial real estate like the back of his hand, does big projects, but he needed to find out who in Associated Bank I would even need to talk to, and he did. He called around, and next thing you know, he put me in touch with Tom. And
this is Tom in Indianapolis.
And so they really didn't know if they were going to expand into Texas on the C&I side. So I put a business plan together and talked fancy to them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, push them a little bit. You learned.
Yeah.
All those people that pushed you picked up.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And so it's certainly one of those things that I had to give them a perspective about Texas, not just Dallas.
Yeah, but it was great because you lived in Texas. You understood Texas.
That's right.
And you could give them an entirely different perspective.
Yeah, because they're Wisconsin. They're the biggest. They're the top dog in Wisconsin.
Let's talk.
Right?
Let's give them a minute because I want to move into the Bankers Club.
Sure.
So, tell me about Associated. Tell me what their claim to fame is as well.
Well, their claim to fame is they have been the bank of the Green Bay Packers since 1919.
That's a long time.
Yeah. And so, doesn't necessarily go over so well down here, but it's kind of fun.
It's
actually.
Well, I think there's a respect factor with that.
Yeah.
Anytime you can say you've been anything since 1919. My grandmother was born in 1918. And she's been gone for 20 years.
Yeah.
That's a long haul.
Was she an Associated Bank customer?
No, she was not. No, she was not. She was a proud Texan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But what I would say about that is the interesting thing about sports teams. Of course, we are licking our wounds from last night's game.
I didn't watch. Who
Well,
won?
we didn't win. Minnesota did.
Okay.
So the Vikings.
Minnesota's winning everything.
Well,
their college team is 9-0.
I know, and so they snuck up on us last night, and that's very depressing. There's a general if you're a football fan from Dallas, there is a general change in demeanor the next morning. There just is. Now, I'm sure it's that way everywhere. And Green Bay, and I mentioned I went to Lambeau a couple of years ago and watched the Green Bay game with a friend of mine named Jack Hines, and then turned right around a week later and went to Minneapolis and watched the Cowboys play the Vikings in their new stadium.
Wow.
And there's just an interesting, when you go to Green Bay, there's a vibe. It is because it's all shareholders. The people own the team.
Right.
There's not a corporate icon. There's not a Jerry Jones.
Right.
There's not a billionaire behind it. There's just working class people that have had some of those seats for 50 and 75 years.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting town.
Well,
it's really a working class town.
Oh, it is. Wisconsin is, I kind of compare it to Montana. The people are very friendly. The work ethic is very strong. Very blue collar.
Yep.
A lot of manufacturing, a lot of farming, agriculture,
Still.
obviously.
Yep.
And so if you were to look at Associated Bank and the types of clients that they attract, it typically mirrors what they have there in Wisconsin.
Yep.
Right?
Big in Milwaukee.
Huge in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
Coming down or having this opportunity to build Associated Bank in Texas has our work is cut out for us. Nobody really knows who we are, and so the branding, we don't get that transfer from Wisconsin and being the bank of the Packers and being recognized. The marketing up there is fairly simple because everybody knows who the bank is already.
You're an outlier.
Right, and I'm an outlier.
Yep.
And so everybody still thinks we're associates.
Yes.
It's like, no.
Oh, I know. I remember associates when I was a kid. We used to have a deal called Beneficial Finance. I don't know. You remember Beneficial? And CIT and all these companies, just different companies. All right, I want to move forward.
Sure.
Because, we're working on a clock here.
Yes, I see it.
I think they charge by the minute.
Okay.
So When did you take the job?
I took the job in January of 2017.
2017. So you're right at 2 years.
I'm coming on 3 years in
Yeah,
February.
It is 3 years, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I'm always living in the past.
Yeah.
So you get this idea.
Mm-hmm.
How did this happen? The Dallas Bankers Club.
Right.
How did this happen?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that kind of built up to it from the standpoint of trying to figure out ways to market Associated Bank and myself, and just kind of getting plugged back into the banking market.
The network.
Yeah, and the same folks that are part of the Dallas Bankers Club, we would typically one-off, either go to drinks or have lunch or dinner or whatever. And rather than having all these individual meetings, I thought, what a great idea just to have it all at once.
Let's just get everybody together.
Let's get everybody together. I mean, we're all friends. We've all worked with each other.
Yep.
In
a lot of crossover.
A lot of crossover. And so one evening, as a friend of mine from Capital One, we would get together for drinks every now and then. And one evening, probably a week before that event, I just started inviting people. A lot of people know the backstory there, but seeing as how we're live, I'm not going to go into some of the...
Great.
Yeah. But anyway, long and short of it is, I invited
Hang on a second. I'll tell you later.
Yeah. That's right. And so I probably, by the end of that evening, I had like 89 invites just from my contact list, and 60 of them had accepted.
Tell me the criteria.
Well, the criteria is kind of reflecting of who I know now, days, just because of how long I've been in the market, is senior vice president on up to bank executive. And there's a lot of bankers in town, and I respect every one of them. But for the Dallas Bankers Club, I just cut it off at senior vice president on up in commercial banking, typically. And so anyway, it has since grown. We have about 200 members now. And it isn't necessarily a member-only scenario where they're paying dues or anything like that.
But it's a tight-knit network.
Yeah. And I want to make it bigger. I want to be inclusive.
What's the normal age limit?
72.
That's great. We have a group of 90-year-olds.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I want to take advantage of their Rolodex, but
60s, late 50s,
probably 50s, I would think. But the title is important for this deal.
But you have to have experience, because if you don't have the experience, if you're a branch manager at a Wells Fargo off of Midway or whatever,
it's not a fit.
No, you're totally out of place. You're like a small fish.
Right. But at the same time, the idea is to mentor those that want to attain
or that are on
status.
The verge.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
There's a lot of talented bankers in this town, and as you know, there's a succession issue with bankers. Either you're junior right out of college, or you're hitting the Social Security line.
Yep.
And there needs to be this progression of talent, getting people into the next level. And really the only way that's going to happen is if they're mentored up to that. There's a lot of talented commercial bankers that, we have blinders on for the most part, because we are still producing business and managing portfolios. So oftentimes we don't have a lot of time to bring the next generation up. And so hopefully through the Dallas Bankers Club, what my hope is that, a couple times a year, we can all get together, whether it's AVP, VP, you name it, various specialties from treasury management. So my thought was also to have a charity event. And I'm still trying to get to this point. And you were very helpful in kind of getting an idea started. and you were thank you for the last Dallas Bankers Club where you donated what was it, $1 million? Thank you for that.
Can't remember.
I'm waiting for that.
It's it's in the mail.
Okay,
checks in the
but
mail.
I want it to be that big one,
Yep.
the 8 foot by 4 foot.
When
one.
you were kind enough to invite me to the last one, and we just off the cuff raised some money.
Yeah.
And you had a designated charity. And, and we
Community Council,
Yeah.
Dallas.
Yeah. And so I think you and I think a lot alike. You know the networks I run in. They're pretty deep here in Dallas.
Yeah.
And there's definitely a bigger opportunity.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. I'm just, as I was alluding to, getting all the bankers together a couple times a year. Let's find a charity and let's have a casino night or whatever works. And we get the sponsors and
I know a lot of banks.
Yeah. And at the end of the evening, whatever's left over goes to the charity.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
But I just like the camaraderie of and it's interesting too. I talk to other bankers in other markets that we operate in, and they can't necessarily believe that we all get along as bankers down here.
I think it's hilarious.
Yeah.
I really do. Well, I totally get it.
Yeah.
I totally get it. Because there's anytime you compete with people, but I'm past president of the Texas Auctioneers Association. We have a nice network of people, and we get together. We have an annual convention, and we give and donate, and we raise money for Scottish Rite Children's Hospital.
Yeah.
And we compete.
Yeah.
Now there's always going to be some of the outliers that are just so independent. They don't care who you are, and they don't care if they ever come to a meeting because it's their own thing. They do their own thing.
Yeah.
With the National Auctioneers Association, you see more successful people because guess what?
Right.
It's not your next door neighbor.
Right.
That guy's from Maine. That guy's from Florida. And yes, we still compete against each other. I had one reach out to me the other day. And he's a past president. He's in the Hall of Fame, and he said, "Hey, we're coming to Dallas, and we got a meeting. Could you give me a list of 4 or 5 people that would be great guests to have at our event?" And he's a direct competitor, in a certain specialty,
Right.
So you just gotta. I believe it's better to be in the community than outside of the community, whatever that community is, and it doesn't necessarily mean residential. It means your industry, your profession, and that's why attorneys, they have large organizations.
Oh yeah.
And when they get together, they just love talking about what they do.
Right.
And you're funny to watch because everybody is getting to know who you are. You'll never need for a job. That's what. And when you're walking around, you know how to work a room, and I think that's so important.
Thank you.
And a younger person could learn a lot from watching how you handle.
Right.
Because bankers, they do have egos.
Right.
And much like your attorneys, your bankers, I always tell people, they said, "Who do you work for?" And I said, "Well, most of my clients are bankers and attorneys."
That's right.
And business owners. Well, it's our same clientele.
Well, necessity is the mother of invention, right? So I needed to do something.
Yeah.
As far as trying various marketing ideas. The thing is with the Dallas Bankers Club, though, it isn't Associated Bank. It isn't.
Nope.
It's kind of taken on a life of its own, and that's the fun thing about it.
It's a friend group.
It's a friend group.
It really is.
Exactly right. And now you're part of that group too. So you're the official auctioneer of the Dallas Bankers Club.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
That's right. And I'll be there for you whenever.
Thank you.
You know that.
Yeah.
So what are your aspirations? We've only got about 4 or 5 minutes left. So let's talk about, you're going to continue to grow Associated Bank in Texas.
Yeah.
And they're not just talking here in Dallas, but we're
No.
talking.
Well, that's
because you don't have the storefronts.
we're never going to have that.
You're not trying to be a storefront bank.
No, so for those that aren't familiar with how LPOs work, loan production offices, that's what we are. We're not a retail branch. We don't take deposits into our location, and so all we do is lend money and do treasury management. In this market, the strategy is to build our commercial real estate. So we're working with large developers like Hall and Billingsley, and we're doing their projects. and Kevin Jordan runs that group. So that's one leg of the stool. The other leg is our participation syndications market, where we're a great partner. So one of the things about Associated Bank is that we're really good for about $30 million in any large deal. Right?
Yep.
And so we can play well in billion-dollar transactions where you just need to fill a bank group up, and we're good partners from that perspective.
And so you end up working with lots of the other banks that you know?
Well, that's just it. They know for a fact that I'm not going to be going after their clients once they invite me into a deal.
Because you're all in the deal.
That's
so
right.
If you give them $30 million on a project, B of A gives them $30 million on a project.
More like 250 million, but yes.
but you've got the players.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
So if you've got the project, I could honestly say if you've got the project, you've got the players that can handle a project like that.
Yeah.
That can make the payments.
That's right. Well, we almost in a way with this group have our own little syndicate. The typical transaction when it comes to a syndication is there's a lead bank, they have the relationships, and then they go out and try to find various bank partners.
Extra capital.
Well, if you can look at being in our Dallas Bankers Club and just work a room and say, hey, I've got a deal coming up and I just need $20 million. What do you think?
Hey, Bob.
Yeah,
I need
that's
20.
right.
Tim's already in for 10.
That's right. We got Texas Capital here, we have all these banks here. Why don't I just work the room and find out who wants to be part of this?
By the end of the evening, you got $200 million.
That's right. You got your bank group filled out for the most part.
Pretty sweet.
And so that's one of the sides. And the other is, we are a relationship bank. We still like to deal with individual owners and
you actually go out to somebody's plant.
Yes.
Or a manufacturing operation to have the meetings.
That's right.
You're a hands-on guy.
Yeah, and that's the preferable way of growing a bank is to have relationships.
Yeah.
Because what happens in the other side is, okay, you deploy $500 million in the syndicate markets, and within a year you could lose $500 million or get paid off anyway. And you're still starting from scratch versus having long-term relationships where you're the value proposition to your clients. You're bringing these solutions to them. You're the bank, but they're not the big deals, right? Yep. They're oftentimes $5 to $20 million of loans, and you're doing some other stuff for them as well. So that's kind of a three-legged stool that we're strategizing about. But once we build out Dallas. So we have an office here. I can still cover all of Texas from here. That's kind of a hub and spoke. We have an energy group down in Houston now.
They have airplanes, don't they?
Yes.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. No, I'm waiting for the high-speed train.
Oh, well, don't wait too long. Don't wait. I'm telling you, don't wait.
Yeah.
No, just go get on Southwest.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. And so my anticipation or strategy is once we get to, let's call it $750 million to $1 billion here in total portfolio in Texas, then we can start putting people into Houston and then start squeezing in up and down the 35 corridor or possibly San Antonio or Austin.
Oh, it's the golden corridor.
Yeah. I mean, you don't need bricks and mortar.
Nope.
In this market.
No, not for what you do.
No.
So you're all in. The great thing is you have a lot of diversity. Everything from supply chain management, loss mitigation. You know a little bit about everything because you've been in the thing for 30 years or close to 30 years. Well, 30 years.
I know.
Where did it go?
I don't know.
That's what I find.
But people still say I look like I'm 21.
People say a lot of things. Yeah.
Once this makeup comes off.
It's really funny because I went to auction school 40 years ago, right after Thanksgiving. It was like the week after Thanksgiving. So it's 40 years ago. And now here we are waking up. And I started my company January the 9th. I say January the 9th because that's the date that they issued me my license.
Right.
But really it started, I'd already worked for a guy for 2 years.
Right.
So, but think about it.
But did you, when you started Classic auction.
Well,
Has
it wasn't classic. No, back then it was Mike Jones Auction Group, or Mike Jones Auctioneers, and then we changed to a different type of corporation because we went from a sole proprietorship, and then we went to a corporation. And it was I still own Mike Jones Auction Group. Yeah, we just don't brand things that way,
right?
Because I'm of my relationship with United Real Estate Brands.
Right. Yeah.
So, hence the delivery of United Classic Auctioneers was simply an homage to United.
Okay.
And so I didn't want to confuse our 500-600 offices nationwide where they go, well, what's Mike Jones doing? He's running this Classic Auctioneers thing. Well, and I threw in United and just called it United Classic Auctioneers. And that's our charity brand on my end of it. And we have other auctioneers and brokers.
How many auctions do you do a year? I mean, if you were to, from the smallest, like the Dallas Bankers Club, where you're actually using your voice as a tool.
Probably 100.
100.
Probably. I would say 100. You know, I do one every Saturday for Texans Can Cars for Kids. That alone, it's every weekend but 3. So you can do the math on that.
Well, you know, if I hadn't already done so, the Cattle Barons Ball was amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you worked it.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
So I recruited Dean. We had a little instructional. Showed him how to become a bid assistant or a ringman. We did the same thing with Tom out of Indianapolis. He flew in especially for the Cattle Barons Ball, and they were part of the team. And I thought it was great to have you there.
What was the net? How much? What?
They're throwing the number of $4 million total.
Oh, really?
And, yeah. Okay. They always do a grand total. And our part was just included in that.
Okay.
You know, they sell the thing out every year. They had 3,000 people there.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
No, I mean, to be honest, I like Travis Tritt.
Yeah, he was good.
Yeah.
Very good.
I didn't stick around for all of Keith Urban, but Travis Tritt.
I thought Travis Tritt was he was a great standalone act.
Yeah.
I had seen him before, so I knew what we were going to see. But of course, he's getting older, you know. But he's still, you know. But he still got it. He still got the voice. He sounds exactly the same as he did before.
And I've never been to Gillies, and that was amazing too.
That's good. So. Well, I'm glad you got to come, and of course, Tom as well.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to do as I close this thing out, and I am getting ready to close it right now. I want to tell you how much I enjoyed seeing the photographs and things of your trip. You know, you just did a mission trip. Tell us about your mission trip real quick.
Sure. I was in Puerto Rico. Still a lot of damage down there from the hurricane. And we're 2 years into this, and there's still almost 70,000 homes that are damaged. So part of our church, we decided to get some adults together. The kids go on their mission trips usually, but this time it was an adult mission trip, and we went to Puerto Rico, spent a week down there, and worked on a compound. Well, let's not call it a compound. Let's call it a postage stamp of a piece of property that has about 10 people, extended family members. And so we spent
a family compound.
Yeah, and it is in the central part of Puerto Rico, you know, way up in the mountains, and we basically just hit it hard.
You were rebuilding and building.
Yeah.
The other thing is you ran into our CFO from over at Texans Can.
Well, she was on the mission trip. Exactly right, Marion Hamlet. And it's a small world.
It's a very small world.
Yeah. And so she was there, and
she does that a lot. She does a lot of mission work.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just want to give you a shout out for that.
Well, thank you. We're going back again next year.
Humanitarian work is God's work.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
All right, my friend, Dean
Thank
H.
you. Dean Harvey.
Dean Harvey.
Yeah.
That's good stuff. Well, you know, we want to, again, thank our veterans for being the veterans that they are and the veterans that they have been. We have a lot of friends that have served in the military, and we want to do a shout out to all branches of the military and thank them for their service as we wrap up this Veterans Day here in Dallas. And a quick shout out to my mother. Today's her birthday as well, so happy birthday to Yvonne Jones. And so we appreciate each and every one of you for being a part of this show today. For those that are part of this and all the other shows we do, we'll be back next week, God willing, and have a great week. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you next time. And from Dallas, Texas, the center of the universe at Lincoln Center, we bid you adieu.